It's Tuesday, November 4th, 2014, and this is the Product Mentor Talk. Today we're joined by one of our mentors, Steve Cohn, founder and CEO of Validately, and he's going to lead a talk with us today on gaining user insights from prototypes. So those of you who are joining us, perhaps for the first time, let me just briefly explain the format. So in the room with us here today are people from the Product Mentor program, mentors and mentees. Those are the people you're seeing along the bottom of your screen. And those of you might be joining us from online, might be joining us through notifications through the product group or many other ways. And for those, and if you're watching the live stream, or you'd like to watch the live stream and participate in the Q&A, you can go to the productmentor.com/live. On the top of the screen, you'll see the video, and along the bottom, you'll see a Google moderator channel where you can post your questions. And as you post those questions, I will be passing them along to Steven in near real time. And you will be getting your answers answered. And so this allows the people in the broader product community, people who didn't get into the kind of this exclusive program of Product Mentor and Mentee through the Product Mentor. It allows everyone to really participate and learn from really these expert mentors on these topics. And so with that said, we're going to just do some super fast introductions around the room. For those who have video in it, and it seems to be working today, so that is 2 out of the 3 other people joining me today. So I'm going to just kind of go around the room, and I'll just start with Steven. Just a quick intro.
My name's Steve Cohn. I'm the founder of Validately. Validately is my 3rd startup. I sold my first 2 companies to Living Social and TripAdvisor.
Cool. And Steve's one of our mentors, and he'll be doing the talk today. And Sarah.
I need to unmute. Hi, I'm Sarah Barkey. I'm a senior product manager at a small firm that makes mobile apps.
Awesome. Mentor or mentee?
Mentee.
Cool. Awesome. And I am Jeremy Horn, aka the product guy, and I'll be moderating today and passing along your questions to people as they come up from the productmentor.com/live, as well as those joining us in the room today. And with all that said, without any more delay, let me hand it over to Steven to start the talk. And there you go, Steve. All with you.
Okay, great. Can you all see my desktop now?
Let's see. Yes, we are all good to go. Take it away.
All right, cool. So thanks. What I want to talk today is about gaining user insights from prototypes. So I'm a big believer in lean and lean product, and not only am I a believer in it, but we built Validately to support that methodology and that type of lean agile development methodology. What I'm going to talk today about is about process, and I'm going to kind of leverage lean concepts and show you how you can use lean concepts at the prototype stage to validate products or gain user insights. So first I'm going to start with defining lean to make sure we're all on the same page. So lean is an approach to launching products that treats all ideas as hypotheses that must be validated by rapid user experimentation in the marketplace. So I'm going to specifically touch on what they mean by experimentation and what they mean by in the marketplace. So let's start by defining the marketplace. So this is what the marketplace is. It's your customers, or it's archetypes of potential customers. The marketplace is not your friends and family, your teammates, because they've already drunk the Kool-Aid, or senior internal stakeholders. Okay, so this is really important. So if you want to, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I get people who say to me, hey Steve, will you talk to a friend of mine? He's got this product idea I think sounds cool for a new business. And I say, sure, I'll talk to your friend. And every time I get on the phone with that person, they say, oh, I have this idea. Well, some of them say, will you sign an NDA, which is a red flag. I will not, it's ridiculous. But then once they move past that and they realize I'm not going to sign an NDA because of some idea that they have, then I ask them, okay, so how do you know that there's demand for this? And they always say, well, all my friends say that's awesome and they'll totally use it. So that's not demand, that's not the marketplace. And if you take your time and rely on that type of feedback, and you invest time because of that feedback, you're going to get a lot of false positives, and you're going to waste a lot of time and money and resources. Same thing with internal stakeholders or teammates. Just because a senior executive has a great idea in the shower doesn't mean that the customers truly want it. As your product manager at a big company, you say, okay, well, what am I going to do? This guy's senior stakeholder, and I can't just say that's a dumb idea. We're not going to do it. So what do I do? And if you run lean validation testing in a transparent way, the customers will speak on your behalf. Okay. So the key here is setting up a structure where you can test in the marketplace and validate ideas. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. Lean UX is a concept that's kind of an offshoot of Lean, and but there's a couple of key things that are a part of Lean UX that I think is worth going through. So first of all, Lean UX starts with a problem to be solved, not a set of features to implement. And they leverage a cross-functional team of designers and product team and developers to focus on solving the problem. Okay, so it's not a top-down driven thing. And Lean UX focuses on outcomes, not outputs. Okay, so what that means is our goal is to improve a specific metric. Our goal is not to deliver a set of designs to you or to the development team. And if you do Lean UX, the schematic kind of summarizes it really, really well. The focus here is that there's a ton of iteration that's done before the build phase. So I talk to people specifically at big companies, and you talk about kind of the development process and how they do it. It's amazing to me the amount of testing that's done after stuff is built. It's done after stuff is built. Extremely inefficient to do it that way. If nothing else, okay, the usability testing, if nothing else, will always, almost every single time you do a usability test on a new set of designs, you almost always learn something. If you are learning that after the product is built and in production, not only does it take you, do you waste engineering effort building something that needs to be fixed and then redesigned and rebuilt, but it's going to take you a minimum 3 weeks, probably 5 to 6 weeks to go from when you first release it to figuring out the problem, to redesigning the problem, to validating the redesign works, to building it again, scheduling it, building it, releasing it. You're talking 3, 4, 5 weeks of an unusable feature in production. And all of that could have been saved, so bad user experience, all of that could have been saved by doing your testing before you build. And I'll tell you, I've talked to thousands of product teams, and I'll tell you definitively that the teams that grow the products that grow the fastest, okay, in the market, do a ton of user testing, and they do it at the prototype stage. They do rapid iteration and rapid testing at the prototype stage. They do not do their user testing after something's built and in production. So what is an experimentation? The rapid experimentation, it's an MVP in Lean talk. And what's an MVP? And I think this is a phrase that's very, very, very commonly misunderstood. People think an MVP is basically a stripped down version of a product that's already built. It doesn't have to be. The point of an MVP is to get validated learning with the least from customers with the least effort. So there's a ton of ways of doing MVPs that would have zero code. And one of the ways to do MVP that has zero code is a prototype. And so a prototype can absolutely be an MVP, and you can learn a ton from users by testing your MVP as a prototype. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So what can you learn from customers? So user testing is more than just usability testing. I think for some times people think that usability testing is simply the same. They're interchangeable. But you can learn a lot more than that. You can learn about demand if you do it the right way. You can learn the optimal solution. You can learn prioritization, feature prioritization, and you could also do customer discovery. I'm going to walk through all these today. All right, so let's talk about usability, because it's the most common. I think it's probably the most well documented. People, I think, typically understand it. It's pretty straightforward. You give people a task to complete, and you've determined whether them understanding that they have to do this task, if they can navigate your app because it's intuitive how they would go from step 1 through step 3 to complete that task. Okay? So in this fictional app called the To-Do app, task is to add notes to your project. What they need to do is they need to go from their current projects page to the notepad page, add a note, and then click that button, add note there. So that's the step flow that the user has to go. That's the typical path they would go through. And the question for a usability test is, can someone who's off the street, who doesn't know anything about your product, figure out that very intuitively that they want to add, if they want to add comments to the project, that they go to the notepad and leave a note there. That's a usability test. Okay. Again, it's much more efficient to do it at the prototype stage, but if you already have stuff that's built and you haven't done usability tests and people aren't using the feature they should be, run a usability test. It's best to do on a representative customer, but it's not critical. And what you simply do is you ask test respondents to complete a task with your prototype or live product and watch them do it. You only need 5 people to do it to uncover somewhere between 85 and 90% of the usability issues. So it's not a huge number. And here's the key. The key is that a good task is not overly prescriptive. So what do I mean by that? Let's go back to this app. In the app, what we want to do is we want to test, can someone on the current projects page, which is the main page, think to go from, if they want to add comments to a certain part of the project, can they think to navigate to the notepad page and then go to the note and add a note. Now the key here is you don't want to be overly prescriptive, and the reason why is because users don't think the way you think as the product manager. Users think from the concept of, I have a problem to be solved. I have a need, a use case, a need that I want to accomplish. So I'm sitting here in the current projects, and my need isn't I want to add a note to the notepad. My need is I want to leave comments on this project. Right? That's the need that I have as the user. Right? Now, the way that we as the product team have decided you can leave comments on the project is we created this notepad, and then we have created a way to add a note to the notepad. But a new user doesn't know what notepad is or what a note is yet. They haven't understood that yet. So the question is, will they be able to figure that out? Is it intuitive? And if you're overly prescriptive, meaning if your task is leave a note on the notepad, all you're doing is you're telling them what to do. And what the tester will do is they'll look for the notepad and say, oh, that's the notepad. Let me click on that. And then here's a button that says add note. Okay, I think I just added a note to the notepad. That would be an example of an overly prescriptive task. If, on the other hand, you phrase the task in the form of a story or a use case. You said, share comments on the project. Okay, which goes to kind of how the user would think, the problem that need to be solved. Then you want to test and figure out, can they, if they have that thought, if they have that need, will they naturally gravitate towards the notepad and leave a note? Is that intuitive? And that's how you do a good user test. You want to measure task completion rates, how long it takes to complete something, how many pages they have to go through. Is it a circuitous route, or they're able to just get through your test? your task quickly. You want to keep note of emotional reactions or signs of confusion if you're doing it in person. And that's a usability test. Pretty straightforward, really, really important. You only need to do 5 people per user flow. The key is in the usability task, and you want to actually measure what people do, not just ask them. You don't want to ask people, was that intuitive? Because they might lie, or they might feel uncomfortable saying it. What you want to see is, did they get there in a reasonable amount of time without having to navigate around a whole bunch of superfluous pages? Okay, that's a usability task. Let me pause there. Is there any questions from the group?
No, just continue. I'll let you know when we have questions.
Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about demand validation test. And I'm going to start with asking a question, and since it's not a live group, you just have to think the answer yourself and assume what others are saying. Okay. So I have a buddy who works at Apple. He's working on the iWatch, and they're actually looking for users to come in and try the iWatch and give them user feedback. So raise your hand if, and I can't see it, but just do it anyways. Raise your hand if you'd be interested in trying out the a new version of the iWatch before anyone else gets to see it or gets to try it out. Now, let me add another component to it, which is you actually have to give them 20 hours over a 1-week period of testing. Now raise your hand if you would actually do that. And the second kind of component is you have to also agree to prepay for the iWatch, and guarantee that you're gonna buy that. So now raise your hand if you want to commit to all 3 of those. And if we were live, because I've done this questioning several times in live settings with hundreds of people in the room, if we were live, what you would have seen is when I asked the first question, 3/4 of the room, if not more, put their hand up because there's a lot of curiosity behind it. As soon as I put the time commitment on there, everyone starts looking around and smiling and thinking to themselves, 20 hours, wow. What are the trade-offs I need to make? Well, I've got, man, it's hard to give 20 hours because I've got this thing coming up with my kid, or I've got this thing coming up with my wife or girlfriend, and oh man, 20 hours to get away from work. Now I got to start making trade-off decisions. That's pretty significant. Is it worth it? But some people will put their hands up. So maybe 10% of the room will put their hands up. So we just dropped from 3/4 to 10%. And then I say you have to also prepay for it, and sight unseen. And what ends up happening is one person will keep their hand up for all 3. That is a demand validation test. And so the problem with the biggest problem that I see across product teams, whether it's a new feature for an existing product that comes through this organization or through marketing or through some executive, or a brand new product idea, the biggest mistake is simply asking people, would you use this product? And as we just demonstrated with the iWatch example, if there's no cost, if there's a trade-off to make, if it's just a question of will you play with a new shiny toy, the answer is to a very high degree yes. People will be very positive if it seems interesting. But once you start asking people what I call the cost question, which means you make it cost the test respondent to say yes, their answers start to change. And there's 3 ways you can make it cost something: their time, their reputation, or their money. Okay? Time, we just talked about, 20 hours a week to test. The reputation is, I'm sure we've all seen landing pages where it says you signed up for a new thing. If you want to jump to the front of the line, you have to tweet this out, or you have to invite a friend, or you have to share with someone. And last is money. Is are you willing to prepay for something? Okay. And if you if you ask a question, if you have people try a prototype, and you don't require some sort of commitment, time, reputation, or money, every piece of information that you got from that user with regard to demand is completely irrelevant. Now, demand is different than usability because someone could determine something is usable but still not want to actually use the product. Okay, but we're talking about purely about demand. You need to require. This works for big companies, small companies. It doesn't matter. I can think of example after example after example. People say, "Oh, well, people would never prepay for a product that they don't even have." That's not true. Let's look at Kickstarter. Okay. Happens in B2B settings all the time. When I was at IBM, I sold software for IBM. We used to have customers pre-buy servers before they were even built, just off the design phase. Okay, Facebook only releases beta products to customers who agree to spend above certain levels testing their beta products. Okay, so like you have to agree to kind of a high spend level on their ad products to even get access to their beta products, and then you have to agree to spend a certain amount on their beta product too. It happens all the time in B2B and consumer apps. You can absolutely, positively get people to prepay for things, and to a certain extent, it doesn't even matter what the dollar amount is. It could be a penny, because as soon as you get someone to take their credit card out of their wallet and put their credit card down, they're making a trade-off decision. The more the money, obviously, the more of a decision it is, but it's still forcing them to think and make trade-off decisions. It's the same thing with regard to social sharing and/or my time. So how do you do a demand validation test? You do it at the prototype stage. You have to do it on customers or on representative archetypes if you don't have a product yet. You have test respondents try the prototype in their natural environment and then ask them the cost question. You need north of 20 per archetype. You want to make sure that they're able to get through the task completion rates. You understand engagement. Are they really enjoying the product and navigating through, or are they just quickly exiting? And then the question is, how many actually pass the cost question? In a big enterprise, if you have a salesperson come to you and says, customer X needs this feature if it's to renew our contract, okay, which happens all the time, and I can tell you I've managed sales organizations before. Is very often not the case. But let's just go with that. What do you as the product manager have? You now have a quiver. You say, okay, great. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to build a prototype of the product. I want you to get customer X to agree to spend 5 to 10 hours over the next month working with me on the prototype of this feature and on X. I also like you to get a contract that says if we deliver this, we'll renew. Now he might push back on the contract. The salesperson might push back on the contract. No, we can't. It's complicated. Yada yada yada. Okay, that's fine. Let's get them to give me their time to try the prototype. And oh, by the way, I'd like you to also find 4 other customers who also need this. Well, we can't find 4. You can't find 4 other customers. We're not a custom development shop. Socialize it among your sales peers on the sales team. Let's see if we could find anyone on the sales team could find 4 other customers. I need 5 customers total. You have 1. You're going to ask them for their 10 minutes of their 10 hours of their time over the next month to try this feature. I need you to find 4 others. See if that feature goes to die, right? See if that feature dies on the vine. See if people really see a need for it and they socialize it and they work hard to find it. And the good news is, if they do, and if it's a high demand feature, they announce it at the sales meeting, several other salespeople are like, yes, I've heard that before. A lot of people, I can think of 3 people who want that. Great. Then awesome. Then great. You have a list of people who are actively engaged in working with you, and you've validated demand. You can do it for existing products, new features of existing products, for brand new products, et cetera, et cetera. You have to make it cost something to say yes.
So, Stephen, we've got a question from Sarah. So, as I hand it over to Sarah, you can jump out of the presentation so we can see you. So, with that said, let me hand it over to you, Sarah, so you can ask your questions.
Okay. I said one that was more about right now. What if you're working on a product that is already free, and if they are, if they are busy in their normal day, and they've already given you, I don't know, precious few hours in their day to do that prototype testing with them, is that enough to say it cost them that time that they normally wouldn't have carved out for somebody? Because I guess it's hard for me to think about charging them if it's something that they already got. It's, an add-on, something else.
It doesn't have to be. You don't have to do all three things. You don't have to give them time, reputation, and money. But if you have a group of customers who are actively engaged in this feature, testing and helping you improve this feature, I just on my new product, we're working on a new feature. I just got a great email from a customer who says, we can't wait to try this new feature. We'll beta test it for you. Our expectation is not that it'll be perfect. We want to be the first people to try it out. It's a great customer. It's someone that we expect, to be has told us they'll be a paying customer as soon as they do it, and they're willing to give us their time. And they've already socialized it within their organization, so they've brought other people in the organization, so their reputation, and they've committed to money as well. But they haven't prepaid the money. Okay, so I haven't prepaid the money yet, so it's just been time and reputation. And the interactions I'm having with them and the excitement I'm seeing through the email is enough for me to say that there's validation there. These are people who really want it. And I have other customers who are doing the same thing. So it doesn't have to be all three of those things. It can be just one of those three things, but you want to make sure at least you're getting some of it. And people ask me sometimes, is email enough? Can like an email sign-up form be enough as validation? No, it's not. You have to follow up on that email. You have to schedule a meeting, and you have to make it cost something to that user, not just simply giving you an email address.
Cool. And I think, Sarah, you had another question also you wanted to ask?
Did that answer your question, Sarah?
Yeah. Let's see. What was the other one I asked? Oh, I was just wondering if you kind of noticed any difference in feedback depending on kind of the quality of the prototypes, because I think we've experienced both, clickable wires versus, mocks that maybe look much closer to what the real thing is.
Yeah, so the question of the fidelity of the prototype.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So with prototype testing, the best practice is early and often, and then escalate. As you see demand, as you see validation, you escalate the time you put into the fidelity of the prototype. But people who really, really want something, who you've definitely validated the problem space, and you're starting to work on the solution space, they will absolutely look at very early mocks and review them with you. Now you should understand their reaction is always going to be better as you move up the fidelity spectrum, right? As you make things look more pretty and more interactive and more fun, the feedback will always be better. But that doesn't mean you can't validate whether people are intrigued enough at the solution and demand enough the solution to continue to engage. So what I mean by that is show them initial prototype that's very low fidelity. Get their reactions, see their interest, and then ask them, are you willing to look at the next iteration of the prototype? And if you are, great. Then I've just gotten you to commit to more time. That shows me that it's important enough for you.
Awesome. So I've got a question from Irfan that I will ask since he's having some technical difficulties. The question I want to ask from Irfan is for demand validation. Do you actually need to go? Do you actually need to go ahead with the charge, or just see if they do? From my side, let's see, my side project, we're doing customer interviews to understand the problem first and testing demand by asking if they will commit time and reputation.
Yeah. So you don't have, I mean, if you're testing, it's really inconsequential at small dollar amounts. It's really inconsequential whether you actually put the charge through. Like you could have a fake, not even hook up a credit card, but a fake form for them to fill out their credit card that doesn't even store their information in a database, that just validates whether they're willing to do that. And as soon as they put pay, it clears out the information. You know, so it's safe. It doesn't charge them. It doesn't matter, because the point is they didn't know that, and they were willing to pay for it anyways, right? And that's the key. The key is figuring out whether people truly want this, because the financial returns are going to be much greater than the $5 you collect now times 20 or whatever. It's not about the $100. It's about seeing whether people really want it.
Got it. Cool. There's another question he's got. It's about when trying to figure out like what questions. How do you figure out what questions to ask? Well, how do you figure out what terminology to use?
How do you figure out what terminology to use? What do you mean? I don't really understand the question. Like in a demand test?
Yeah, I think when you were talking kind of earlier in the presentation.
Add a note versus add a comment. Oh, you mean how do you determine what on usability testing? How do you determine the right terminology? Is that right, Griffin?
Yep.
Okay, great. So the answer is, think about it from a use case perspective. So agile stories are really, really good at that. Agile stories are a little over the top. You don't need to say, as a user, I want to do X, Y, Z, because so like there's a like a definition of like how to do an agile story, which is maybe a little more than you need for a usability test, but it's directionally the right way. So directionally, it is, as a user, I want to achieve this, right? With your product, I want to share my feelings about the project. I want to add my comments about the project. That's how a user would think. A user doesn't think, I want to add notes to a notepad. That's not how a user intuitively, that's just not a problem they need to solve, right? So that's how you want to think, and that's how you want to phrase the user tasks.
Cool. And then I'm going to hand it back over to Sarah, who's got another question.
I gotta unmute. Where was my question? So it was this kind of a question because you talked about people already kind of agreeing to see another prototype. I guess, how important is it to balance, or how do you balance usually the pool of people that see the iterations of a prototype over time? Do you keep resampling the people that have seen it before because they agreed versus getting fresh eyes on a newer version?
I mean, I think there's a mix. I think you want to, it's just like in product, you want to keep engagement. You want to see how long you can continue to engage the same set of customers. Is there fall off? Why are they falling off? If a certain person drops off between the basic prototype and the advanced prototype, why is that? Don't assume you know the answer. And so you want to keep engagement, but it's great to have fresh eyes on the new prototype too. I mean, it's very similar to how you look at product. Your actual product. You want to maintain engagement with your existing users, but you also want to bring in new users and validate that you're building for the right thing for new users too.
Cool. So that's all the question we have at the moment. So Steve, you can kind of take it away and jump back into the presentation.
All right. So now I'm going to talk about customer discovery tests. As it sounds, the goal of this test is to figure out who your customer is. This is a test that could be done for new features of an existing product, or existing features of an existing product, or a completely new product. Okay. And so the key to this is what's called a customer archetype. Okay, so these are example customer archetypes, but the biggest mistake people make on customer archetypes is they think they simply do it as its biography. Okay, so John is a 65-year-old white male who is a businessman, right? That's not John. Okay, that's not good enough from an archetype perspective. What you really want to do to understand John is you want to think of a day in the life of John. He wakes up in the morning. How does he get to work? He drives to work. What does he do while he's driving to work? What does he think about work? What is motivating John right now? Like how does he? Why does he go to work at 65? Like, what is interesting to him? What is he trying to solve now? What occupies his thoughts, and what motivates him? What influences John to make decisions? What's John's disposable income? Is he saving right now because he's near retirement, or does he feel like he's flush and has disposable income? And where does he like to spend his disposable income? And how does he make those decisions about where to spend the disposable income? Right? That's how you need to get into the psyche of John, and whether it's B2B or consumer, it doesn't matter. Right? The point is, we're not just simply a list of biographical information. You think about it from a day in the life of who we are and what motivates us and what's our financial resources and what do we do, how do we spend our time, and how do we make decisions, and put that together into different archetypes. Okay. Then you want to, for new products, you want to test the prototype, do demand tests against each archetype, and don't assume you already know what that is. Okay, and you might be pleasantly surprised. It happens all the time where you think you go into your customer discovery test thinking you know who your customer is, and you come out of it thinking, wow, there's a totally different customer who is super excited for this product. We did not anticipate that, and it's not John, it's Akiko. Look at Akiko and John, pretty different human beings, right? So how you would message, the coloring scheme, all that type of stuff between John and Akiko might be very, very different. And now that you know that John is not the power user that's going to be a quick adopter, it's really Akiko, that changes things. It changes your marketing strategy. It changes your go-to-market strategy, and it changes, probably some design decisions you're about to make and feature decisions.
I got a quick question from Sarah for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Hi. It sounds like what you're talking about is what I've also heard of as personas, and if that's the
archetypes, personas. Yep.
Okay, and if that's the case, just kind of how it's probably a side project. It sounds like step 0 before you do customer discovery, you have to create those, right, and spend the time.
Exactly
to
right.
have those hands.
Step 0 is literally to create those personas, and the mistake is made is not going deep enough. You want to make sure you go deep and understand and think about it from a day in the life of a typical day in the life of that user. Of that potential user. Now, this is something you can do for existing products too, and existing features. Now, let's say you launch a feature and you're like, it's really heavily used. You see in your analytics, it's really heavily used from one set of customers, but for some reason, another set of customers just aren't gravitating towards that feature. Don't just assume that's a fait accompli and will never be changed. Could not be changed. Run a customer discovery test, a demand test, against that other set of customer segment, and you might be surprised as to what the answer is and the reason why they're not adopting. It might be a small change, especially if they're already in the same product, they're just not using that feature. It might be a small thing that is the difference. And by the way, we talk a lot about biography, biographical information, but oftentimes it's what's called a psychographic. Okay, So I'll tell you, in my business, in Validately, we have customers that are big public companies, and we have customers who are startups. We have customers and customers in between. We have customers that are B2B. We have customers who are consumer. We have customers who are e-commerce, and we have customers who are search. There's no kind of pattern there, with one exception. The customer, it's a psychographic who our customer is, and the psychographic is people who believe in agile or lean, rapid iteration and testing, and have UX teams that do this, and that's who our customer is. And so it's not a simple bucket of we serve large B2B Fortune 500 companies, that spend over $5 million a year in their, in design, whatever, right? So that's not the right way to segment our customers. Must be done with customers or representative. You create different customer archetypes. You run the same demand validation tests against each archetype. You need 20 per archetype to start to see patterns. You want to measure completion, engagement, exits, and passing the cost question. Any other questions before I move on to the new test?
Yeah, we actually just had another question just come in, so good timing. So yeah, as I asked the question, if you can kind of swap back to video, that'll be great. So the question is from Corey in New York. Do you have best practices for guiding feedback from what the user wants to do, to dig down and find out why he or she wants it that way?
Sorry, I'm entranced by my. Okay, there we go. Sorry, can you ask that question again?
Sure. Do you have best practices for guiding feedback from what the user wants the product to do, to dig down and find out why he or she wants it that way?
Yeah, so the thing you want to do in getting feedback from customers is you never want to have them describe the solution to you. You want to have them describe the problem that they need to be solved that is not being solved by the existing prototype. Okay? And you want to look for consistencies among different customers on that feedback. And you then want to determine within that segment, do you see consistencies, or is this a one-off thing, or do I not even serve that customer segment right now? I'm going to serve a different customer segment who doesn't need that, doesn't have that problem to be solved, because it sounds like an important problem, but it's a big build that's very different than what we're looking to do. But the key is extrapolate a level up beyond a. What happens oftentimes is sometimes the people go into solution mode, and you don't want them in solution mode. Okay, you want to get them into. You can stop them and pause them and say that's interesting, but let's take a step back. Tell me about the problem that you're trying to solve that isn't being solved, and why you think it's not being solved with what you're seeing right now. And there might be a time where they just say something, and you're like, that is true. We are not solving that problem. It sounds like an important problem to solve, but I can't solve that because with my limited resources, it's a different product. You need a different product, and what oftentimes I'll do is if I know of that product, I'll say, here's my suggestion. Here's a product I've heard that people are using and seem to be happy with. And best of luck. But I can't solve that problem for you. I have to stay focused on the problem I'm solving. Did that answer your question?
Well, since it was submitted to us, we will assume so. With that, that's all the questions we have right now. So, Steven, take it away.
All right. All right, future prioritization tests. So this is one of my favorite slides of any presentation I've ever given in my entire business career. So, oh, not this slide. The next slide. Sorry. So you do future prioritization at the prototype stage. Okay. This is particularly interesting for agile teams who have sprints. and need to get feedback on what needs to go into the next sprint among the different features. Again, the customers or representative customers. As a matter of fact, on the who question, with the exception of usability tests, you always want to do it on customers. Usability tests do not need to be done on customers. You can do a hallway test, which is literally grab someone who walks by you in the hallway and see if they can just complete a task. But so you don't necessarily need your own customers to do a usability task, unless it's B2B. B2B, it's kind of hard to do usability testing on random people because it's just different. But for any other type of test, demand test, you want to understand. You want to talk to your customers. And what you do with a feature prioritization test is you create a minimalist version, which I'm about to show you, of a product feature by stripping out the different pieces of functionality. And you run that same demand test against each minimalist version. You need 20 respondents is optimal, but if you can't do it against each version, 5 is acceptable. And what you're looking for is against these different minimalist versions, are people completing, engaging, passing the cost question differently. So let me give you an example. Oh, I skipped over a slide. Sorry about this. I skipped over a slide. I was wondering why I missed this slide. So let me go to this slide. So this was the slide I wanted to get through, and then when I flipped back and forth, I missed the slide. So this is a typical Apple product. This is a typical Google product. And this is your product. And I've given this slide to rooms full of hundreds of people, and it always gets a lot of chuckles because it hits the nail on the head almost every single time. In fact, I just did a meetup out in San Francisco, and this slide got tweeted out like 20 different times and retweeted because it's so true. Okay, so what happens is that simplification with your product, it gets really, really hard because everyone has a feature idea that they need to add into your app. Okay. And so what a feature prioritization test does is helps you figure it out. So here's an example of how you do it. I'm sorry, I didn't do that first lead-in slide. Flipping back and forth, I got screwed up. So let's start with the app, okay, the initial app. And let's take it as an assumption that every single feature is unique. Let's just take it as an assumption. So ignore the labels because edit and delete, it's kind of maybe the same thing, and OK and save might be the same thing, but just ignore that for a minute. Let's just assume that every feature is unique and every feature is important. There's value in every feature. The question here is prioritization. Okay? So here's how we're going to run a prioritization test. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to strip out everything. We're going to simplify the page, and we're going to pull through the one key piece that we think that is literally critical to do it. You cannot do this without the apply button. Okay, you cannot get through this page. That is the trigger. It's really, really important. So let's just strip everything else out. Let's put the apply button there, and let's run our demand validation test. And as we've done that, what we've heard over and over again is really hard to apply because I don't know what I'm applying for. I really love to figure out a way to see the options, right? Okay, so that means browse. So now let's run a test, demand validation test, with only browse and only apply in there, okay? And let's measure response, let's measure people passing the cost, let's see satisfaction and try to understand, are people still excited about this app, even with a stripped down version of just browse and just apply? Okay, so we've simplified it dramatically, and what we found is that is the case. That we can execute this test and people are very happy. Now, internally, you would never say, "Hey, that means we're never going to build any of these other buttons." You'd say, from a prioritization standpoint, if the goal in a lean agile team is to ship the right thing as quickly as possible and get it into customers' hands and learn, let's start here. Let's start with just browse and apply. and then we could selectively add in other features, because we're getting really good response rates from this. Practically what ends up happening is a lot of those other things get left on the cutting room floor, because what ends up happening is customers are using that, and once they start using it, they realize that they need other things that you didn't even think of, and that's how you want to do it. So you want to prioritize the set of features that can get your product into market as quickly as possible, with a high enough satisfaction, high enough usage rate. And you can determine that based on demand validation, but nothing more. And let your users tell you what they need next. Make sense? Any questions before I move on?
No, you're good.
Okay. The last one is a solution discovery test. Okay. The concept of a solution discovery test is it basically applies a conjoint analysis framework to Lean UX. What I mean by that is a conjoint analysis is if you put two options in front of a customer, brown or green, and the customer can only choose one. So you can choose brown or green. What do you choose? Green. You can choose blue or green. What do you choose? Green. You can choose yellow or green. What do you choose? Green. You can choose red or green. What do you choose? Red. Red or blue. What do you choose? Red. Red or orange. What do you choose? Red. Okay, that's a conjoint analysis. You have two options. There's two things you could possibly do. You have to keep making prioritization and trade-off decisions until, if you run that enough, you'll start to see consistent patterns where customers, put their value in one thing. But the key is that they're making a trade-off. They're comparing. They have two options, and they're choosing. It doesn't have to be two, but they have two options in the case I just gave, and they have to make a decision. They can only choose one, and they're making that trade-off decision. That's a conjoint analysis. Okay. So the solution discovery test leverages that. And why do we do that? Because let's remember where we started, which is Lean UX starts with a problem to be solved. And there are many ways to solve that problem. Okay, not a set of features to deliver, a problem to be solved. And so the solution discovery test puts these different options in front of potential users and lets the customer's actions, not their words, their actions, determine the best way to solve the problem. So here's what I mean. Let's say you're a content site, and one of your parts of your site is that you have some great content that's, it's great for SEO. A lot of people enter in that page. Great, so that's good. We've kind of found a way to get a lot of people to come to our site. What we want to do is drive a deeper engagement with them and get them to learn more about a specific subject. So there's many different ways to solve that problem, right? So one way is we could crowdsource learning through a simple comment box. Another way is we could search the web for learning based on a search box that produces web results that we frame up and keep them on site, but it's framed content, but it's someone else's content. And then there's a third way, as in this example, with is ask an expert, which an executive thought of and said this would be great because we can have an expert panel here, and we can start monetizing it and charge by the hour, and that'll help us make our revenue number, in a couple of quarters, and and it would be awesome. People would love it, right? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. We don't know. But what a solution discovery test is it puts these three options in front of customers and asks them to learn more about a specific subject and sees how they solve that problem naturally. Do they chat with an expert but then not go through on the pay button and sign up to pay? Are they just curious about it but they don't really want to actually do it? Does search produce quality responses that are interesting but maybe too off topic? And really what are they looking for is just simple community engagement, where a simple comment box, which is a little widget, could be delivered in maybe 1 day's worth of code, could solve that problem and drive deeper engagement, versus search, which might take 2 weeks worth of code, and chat with an expert, which might take an entire quarter to build out, because it's not just code, it's a whole solution behind it. And so the idea here is not just assuming that there's a solution to be built, but it's a problem to be solved. Use the conjoint framework to put multiple solutions to that same problem in front of her and see how they naturally gravitate towards solving that problem. Do it at the prototype stage. Customers are archetypes. Have test response, use a prototype with competing solutions to the same problem. Tests should be done in the customer's natural environment, and then ask them the cost question. 20 per archetype, and it's the same stuff you want to measure. Questions on that?
We have a question that came in from Corey just now, so you can swap back to video. Question just came in from Corey as a follow-up to one of the questions that was asked earlier. Is there a way to guide testers to identify the problem in a situation where you don't have the currency to go back and forth with them a lot?
Ask it again. Is there a way to guide testers?
Is there a way to guide testers to identify the problem in a situation where you don't have the currency to go back and forth with them a lot?
Well, if you don't have the currency, it's because they're not interested in what you're working on. So that's a bad signal. You want to find people who truly care about what you're working on, and I promise you, you can. I promise you, if you're working on something that people value and are really interested because it's going to solve a significant problem for them, they will spend the time with you. And if you can't keep their attention, it's simply because they don't really care about what you're doing. You've lost them. It's just not compelling to them. But to the question is, can you read the first part of the question again? Can you guide? How do you guide? Say it again. Sorry, Jeremy.
Yeah, sorry. Is there a way to guide? Let's see. Yeah. Is there a way to guide testers to identify the problem in a situation where you don't have the currency to go back and forth with them a lot?
To identify the problem. So, I mean, the key thing you want to do is you don't want to guide. So the word guide is troubling. You never want to guide a tester. You want them to go where they feel natural going. But if the question is, can you tease out the problem that they have, I think you just simply ask them. You say, what problem are you trying to solve that we don't solve? Like, what is it that you want to do that we can't, do for you within this app? And that's it. I think it's that simple. And if they're interested, they'll tell you. And if they're not, they're not. Hey, listen, the key thing with these things is you're going to be wrong a lot in product development, okay, and product management. And if you're not comfortable with being wrong, and if you're not comfortable with reading the actual data that tells you you're wrong, and that there's not demand for this thing, even though you thought there was demand, if you ignore that signal from the customer because you just want to build it anyways, well, good luck. You don't need any of these techniques. Just go for it. Just build. But if you're truly open to learning and changing course based on learning, then you have to be willing to see real demand patterns. So let me be clear. These tests are not. You're not going to. The goal of these tests, the goal of lean, is to reduce waste through validated learning. That's lean. Reducing waste through validated learning. And that means killing ideas quickly. That doesn't mean just because people say, hey, this is awesome and I will give you more time and I will prepay for it, doesn't necessarily mean you're guaranteed a hit. Okay? There's no guarantees of anything. But what there is a guarantee of is if you can't find anyone who is interested enough in your project that you're working on and the early prototypes of your solution to give you their time, your reputation, or money, then you're not solving a problem for them. And if you can't find anyone you're solving a problem for, then you have a business problem. But you have to be open to it. And if you feel like if you're talking to a customer and you feel like you're losing them, that they just don't have any interest in going further, that's the signal that you're looking for. You're looking for them to tell you, I'm not interested in what you're doing. It's okay to hear that. That means they're not interested, so don't build it for them. Find someone who truly is interested, and then determine whether that's a representative, segment of a big customer base. And if it's not, then don't build that product or that feature. Find something that is. If you're a product, you're in the hit business. That is all. That's all you can do, is be in the hit business. If you're not in the hit business, you're wasting your time. And lean techniques are about avoiding waste, avoiding things that aren't going to be hits as quickly and painlessly as possible. That's all I got.
That's great. And Sarah's got a question.
I was just trying to get a little more clarity between the feature prioritization versus, I guess, the solution discovery. Because with feature prioritization, I guess, how do you avoid, you have 5 features you want to test, you trimmed it down to 1, and then you go down a road based on the reactions to that 1, but it maybe would have been a different road if you had picked like 2 to go first. So
that's what you do. You test different minimalist versions
at the same time. Okay.
Yeah, in parallel. Yeah.
Okay.
Different set of users. Yeah.
Whereas,
I mean, you don't know what that one is, right? Don't assume you know what that one is. So I just gave one example, but you want to test different iterations of that minimalist version, and see where you get the reaction from customers.
Okay. Whereas the solution discovery is more of it looked similar, but it looked like they were maybe side to side. Like, here's the 4 options. Like, instead of prioritizing those different ways, chat versus search versus something else, those are all together. Your example?
Yeah, exactly. Now they're competing with with the user's attention. And the question is, I have 3 ways to solve your problem, all competing, all on the same page. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And the person might be super, super excited and wrote this huge business plan and a huge financial model about chat with an expert. But if customers don't want to chat with an expert, they just simply want community for free. It doesn't matter what the financial model says. Customers don't want it.
Right.
And that's your job in product, is to figure that out before you build it.
Thanks.
Cool. So back to you, Steve, and the talk.
No, that's it. That's all I got.
That's it. Okay.
If you want to learn more, you could follow. I blog about this stuff on validately.com/lean user testing. You can email me, Steven@validately.com. And I'm about to sneeze. Sorry. Oh boy, I have to sneeze. Excuse me. And I'm happy to answer your questions and go back and forth. Irfan and I go back and forth. He's like one of my editors for our blog. He's awesome. He gives me really good insights from a customer's perspective. Which, by the way, is demand validation, because he keeps giving me his time for free, and it's because he's interested in the topic, and he wants to learn more, and he is engaged. So that tells me that he's I'm connecting with Irfan and how he that customer segment. I have other customers who are doing that. Woot woot. Irfan just typed in woot in the group chat for those who didn't see. So follow that blog. You'll get a lot of tips and techniques like that for free. If you sign up to validately.com, I will give you free consulting on it, on lean user testing as well.
Cool. Awesome. So as always, afterwards, we'll be sharing Steve's presentation up on our SlideShare channel. And really, thanks again, Steve, founder and CEO of Validately, for today's topic on gaining user insights through prototypes. And also a big thank you from me, Jeremy Horn, the product guy, and to everyone else who joined us today through YouTube or the productmentor.com/live, or lots of other different ways that you may have joined us. So also, if you're interested in being a mentor, just like Steve, come and visit us at theproductmentor.com and sign up. We're always looking for more mentors. And also, if you are looking to fill a product job with a great product person, or perhaps vice versa, you can visit our very own, free for all product people and product posting people as well, our job board at theproductjobs.com. And again, thank you everyone for joining us, and I'll see you guys all next time. Bye.